Happy Sabbath. What a beautiful day. Look at all our helpers today. Today we're going to have a story. Does anybody like stories? Anybody out there? Stories? We're okay with stories? Well, when I was a lad, about 3 years ago, we lived in a smaller house, and I'm going to tell you a story about walking water. You ever heard of walking water? Nobody? Anybody heard of walking water before? No? You ever heard of running water? Running water? Walking water's like running water, except a lot slower. The kind you carry. So that's walking water. Every time I pay our water bill, I thank him for running water. I've had walking water. We came home to our little house, and it was about this time of the year, except it was a lot colder. There was snow on the ground. And our little house wasn't really fancy because it didn't even have a strip of wood around the outside right near the ground, and the cold wind went blowing right underneath that house. And we got home and we opened the door. It was kind of cold inside. And we went to turn on the water, and what do you suppose happened? Don't know? Anybody have a guess what happened when we tried to turn on the water? Well, it didn't go at all. No water there. Have you ever experienced that? Anybody? Wow. Yeah, so you've been there. So I was looking at that situation, and I figured out that those pipes were frozen. You ever seen ice before? You never seen ice?
I've seen ice.
Is ice kind of liquid or is it kind of solid? What
is it like a
solid.
Rock,
or is it like a rubber band?
A rock.
A rubber band in liquid. You can catch me afterwards. We'll discuss the liquidity of rubber bands. Anyway, so here's what happened. I'm looking at this situation and I'm figuring, wow. I go outside, I look under the house, and here's these big long pipes, and I'm thinking there's ice in there somewhere, but I don't want to go crawling under this house. And I was trying to figure out how do you thaw out ice? You ever done that before? You thaw it out? Well, there's something some people have done, put a little salt on ice. Sometimes that does it. Tough to get salt inside of a pipe. That doesn't work. Sometimes if you heat up things, like if you turn a hair dryer on ice, you ever tried that? Hair dryer? That helps a little bit. Hot air popcorn popper. It's another thought. We had to thaw out sheets one time. Place we lived, it was so cold we used a hot air popcorn popper, thaw out our sheets before we climbed in bed. But I didn't want to crawl under this house with a hot air popcorn popper or not a hair dryer. Thought about something else. I even brought one of these along. A kit that looked kind of like this. Ever seen that kind of dealio before? I don't even have it put together because I haven't used it to thaw out our pipes. But you know what that is? You ever seen one of those? Well, you put a little fire to that and you turn the handle and flames come shooting out of there. It's not a good thing. It's a good thing for daddy or mommy to use, not for kids necessarily. Well, I started thinking about how do you thaw out pipes under a house? How do you do that? Anybody have an idea? My dad told me if you took a welding electrical welder and you put a clamp on the far end of a pipe and a close end of a pipe, it'll heat up that pipe. I didn't have a welder, so that was kind of out. I thought about this. What do you have around the house that'll produce heat? Well, the exhaust of a car, that'll produce heat, won't it? What's the downside of that? I'm a nurse, so we didn't go there. Downside is it could kill you. That's not a good thing. You ever breathed smoke before? Not a good thing. I tried being around a campfire. No, it's not fun at all. Didn't use the exhaust of a car. So I was thinking, what do we have in the house that produces heat? What do you have? Have a stove. But it's tough to carry a stove underneath the house and run it along the pipe. That's a lot of work. And I thought of something. I won't tell you what I thought of, but I'll show you what I used. We first of all had to make the air so it's not blowing underneath that house. So I used this. You ever seen these before? What is that? It's a piece of wood. There's a certain name for this. You know a certain name for this? You ever heard of lath? L-A-T-H? He who laughs last, laughs last. Say that 5 times in a row. But that's this thing. I got a whole bundle of this stuff, and then I got a sheet of this. You ever heard of visqueen? That's what we called that. You see what this is? Can you hand that down the row? Yeah, big roll of plastic. Well, I cut sheets of those in big, thick, long sheets. I nailed that with my hammer and nails all the way around that house. So we had no wind blowing under the house. Does that make sense? I ought to have made a lot of sense. And then I'll tell you what I did. I grabbed me a roll of this stuff. You ever seen that stuff? That holds the world together. I think that that's an amazing. Well, what is this stuff called? Anybody? What's that? Duct tape. I don't know how many ducks they used to invent this, but it doesn't even quack, right? But then I used some of this stuff. What is that about? Anybody have an idea? Is that like a trunk for an elephant? Hello there. What is it? What do you use this for? I'll tell you what I did. You know, anybody have a clothes dryer in your house? Clothes dryer? You do? You guys do? What is interesting as far as thawing out pipes with a clothes dryer? What does a clothes dryer do? I have a question. You ever been cold and your mommy or daddy takes a nice blanket out of the dryer and wraps it around you? You ever had that happen? Does that feel good?
Yeah.
There we go. An enthusiastic yeah, right there. So I'll tell you what I did. I took this tape and I taped it right to where that hot air came out of the dryer, and I put the other end right down underneath the house. And I wanted to make sure no moist air is running under the house. Thank you so much. And so you know what? 15 minutes later, we had running water. I love running water. Don't you love running water? And you know what I learned? That Jesus loves us so much that when our heart is frozen cold, like those frozen pipes, and difficult to reach with all kinds of challenging things, that God wraps us in this blanket of love, and he covers us, and he spreads his warmth, that warm generating love of God. And so that's the story of running and walking water. And we'll have another story next week. Thank you so much for listening. Have a happy Sabbath. You can go join your parents now.